Dr. Aurelia Kun stood in the sterile, white lab of Halcyon 5, gazing through the reinforced windows at the swirling clouds of Azathara below. The planet was a death trap, hostile and uninhabitable, with toxic gases and lethal compounds in its atmosphere that could kill any living being in minutes. Azathara's presence, though, was not just a curse. It was a valuable resource for those brave enough to endure its dangers. The research station, built in the shadows of the planet, was humanity's outpost in this toxic expanse. Halcyon 5 was Earth's last hope for gathering vital resources that could save their homeworld from its energy crisis. Humanity had always struggled with the Azathari, the native species of Azathara, who were infamous for their mastery over poisons. The Azathari had developed toxins so potent that even the most advanced starships could be crippled by them in mere hours. Humanity had always been on the defensive until now. Dr. Kun, a biochemist and genetic engineer, had arrived at Halcyon 5 with a singular mission to find a way to neutralize the Azathari toxins. These poisons had long been considered impossible to overcome, but Kun was different. She had spent years studying the molecular structure of the toxins, certain that there was a way to turn the tables on the Azathari and use their own weapons against them. If she succeeded, it could change everything. It could save Earth's energy systems, improve medical treatments, and even shift the balance of power in the growing conflict between humans and Azathari. As she worked late into the night, running tests and analyzing results, something unexpected happened. Dr. Kun was going through some old archives, searching for any hints or forgotten knowledge about the Azathari toxins, when she stumbled upon an ancient text hidden deep in the station's database. The document was barely legible old, scanned, and barely intact, but it contained something astonishing. The text spoke of the Resilient One, a being who had lived long ago, a human who had withstood the Azathari poisons, even after being exposed to their full strength. It claimed that the humans survived the toxins, and instead of succumbing, grew stronger. According to the document, this individual had been deliberately exposed to the Azathari toxins in a controlled experiment. This wasn't just a myth or a legend, it was real, and someone had survived. Dr. Kun's heart raced as she read the passage again. Could it be possible? Could humanity have the potential to survive Azathari toxins if only they could unlock the right genetic key? The implications were enormous. If she could replicate this human resilience, she could not only protect humanity from the toxins, but could also open new doors in medicine, biotechnology, and military defense. The discovery could shift the course of human history. But there were many questions left unanswered. Who was the Resilient One? How had they survived? And what made them different from everyone else? Kun knew that this was no ordinary breakthrough. She had been working on her experiments with the Azathari toxins for months, but the discovery of this ancient text made her realize that there was something far greater at play. This Resilient One was no ordinary human. It was someone who had transcended the very limitations that had held humanity back for centuries. If this person could survive the toxins, maybe the key to humanity's future lay in unlocking their resilience. The next few days were a blur of frantic research. Dr. Kun dedicated herself to studying the text in greater detail, but the more she uncovered, the more questions arose. The document was fragmented, with crucial parts missing. There was no record of who the Resilient One was or how their exposure to the toxins had occurred. There were also vague references to a gift, but no explanation of what this meant. What kind of gift was it? And if humans could indeed survive the toxins, what price would they have to pay? The discovery sent shockwaves through the station. Some of her colleagues were excited, while others were skeptical. Some thought it was a hoax, an ancient piece of propaganda meant to distract from the real issues. But Dr. Kun could feel the gravity of it. This wasn't just a scientific breakthrough. This was the key to changing everything. The Azathari had always been seen as a threat, an alien species that wielded toxins like weapons. But if humanity could find a way to survive their poisons, everything could be different. However, the more Dr. Kun delved into the mystery, the more she realized that others were beginning to take notice as well. Not everyone on Halcyon 5 had noble intentions. The discovery had attracted the attention of powerful individuals, people who had their own agendas and were eager to use the knowledge for their own purposes. Some saw the potential for weaponizing the human resilience and turning it into a tool of war. Others sought to keep it hidden, afraid that the world wasn't ready for the consequences of such power. Dr. Kun wasn't sure who she could trust. But one thing was certain: this discovery was too important to ignore. She had to find out more, even if it meant taking dangerous risks. The question now was not just how to survive the Azathari toxins, but how to unlock the power hidden within humanity's DNA. Could she replicate the resilience of the Resilient One? Could this be the key to humanity's salvation, or would it lead them down a darker path? With a renewed sense of purpose, Dr. Kun set aside her doubts and focused on the task at hand. The answers were out there, and she would find them no matter the cost. But as the days went on, she began to wonder just how far she was willing to go. Was the truth worth the price of her own humanity? And would she be prepared for the consequences of unlocking the secrets of the Resilient One? The answers, she knew, were waiting for her. But she could sense that she was on the brink of something far bigger than she had ever imagined. Dr. Aurelia Kun spent the next few weeks diving deeper into the toxins, testing her theories, and uncovering more secrets than she ever expected. Her mind raced as she processed the implications of her findings. The more she examined the toxins, the more she began to realize that they were not just simple poisons, they were much more complex. They didn't merely break down the human body, they seemed to interact with the very essence of the human genome. The Azathari poisons weren't just deadly, they were transformative. At first, Dr. Kun believed that the toxins would only affect her physical health, burning, weakening, or maybe even killing her. But as she began to run simulations on the genetic level, she noticed something startling. The toxins didn't just attack cells. They seemed to trigger dormant, latent traits deep in the human DNA. It was as if the very act of exposure could catalyze a rapid evolutionary process. This wasn't just survival, it was a change on a genetic scale that could alter humanity itself. This discovery left Dr. Kun both exhilarated and terrified. She had hoped to find a way to neutralize the toxins, but now it appeared that the toxins were unlocking a potential in humans that no one could predict. These changes, if they occurred, could be dangerous. Would humanity emerge stronger, or would the toxins leave them as something? The thought of exposing a human to this unknown change was more than unsettling. It was deeply dangerous. But Dr. Kun couldn't ignore the potential. If humanity could adapt to the Azathari toxins, it would be a game changer. No more would humans have to cower in fear of the Azathari's poisons. They could confront the Azathari on equal footing, perhaps even surpass them. But the question gnawed at her: was humanity ready for such a change? Was she? The dilemma weighed heavily on Dr. Kun's mind. The idea of testing the toxins on herself began to seem almost inevitable. She had always been driven, always willing to put her knowledge to the test. She was the expert, after all. If anyone was to understand the effects, it would be her. The thought of using herself as the test subject, however, terrified her. If the transformation occurred, it wouldn't just change her body, it might alter everything about her mind, her consciousness, even her identity. But if she couldn't trust herself, who else could she trust? She needed a volunteer. She had spent years building relationships with her colleagues on Halcyon 5, and there were many who admired her work. But asking them to expose themselves to a substance that could transform them in ways no one understood seemed too cruel. Yet the risks were clear. If humanity was going to survive, someone had to make the leap. And that person, she thought grimly, might have to be her. Still, it wasn't just the moral dilemma that weighed on her. Dr. Kun was also struggling with a deeper truth she had uncovered, one that shook her to her core. The Azathari, it seemed, hadn't just discovered their toxins on their own. They had been experimenting on humans for centuries. Early records uncovered from ancient Azathari texts revealed that the Azathari had been capturing and genetically modifying human prisoners, people taken long before Earth's first contact with the species. They had been using these humans as test subjects for the very toxins that Dr. Kun was now trying to neutralize. These experiments were horrifying. The Azathari had systematically altered human DNA, trying to make it more resistant to their poisons, but the results were often gruesome. The prisoners were left in horrific states, sometimes surviving the toxins, but suffering from strange mutations. Others didn't survive at all, their bodies breaking down in unnatural ways. But it wasn't just the experiments themselves that disturbed Dr. Kun. It was the realization that humanity had been part of this nightmare for centuries without even knowing it. Her species had been experimented on by the Azathari, and the results of those experiments might be far more dangerous than anyone could have predicted. This discovery sent a chill through Dr. Kun. The idea that humanity had been manipulated by the Azathari for so long forced her to reconsider everything she thought she knew. Was this the reason why humans seemed so vulnerable to the toxins? Had the Azathari planted the seeds for humanity's downfall long before contact was made? These questions, along with the mystery of the Resilient One, created a knot of uncertainty in her mind. But Dr. Kun couldn't afford to dwell on these revelations for too long. The pressure from Earth's leaders was mounting. Halcyon 5's importance had increased with the discovery of the toxin's potential, and the political stakes had never been higher. Earth's diplomats were under fire from all sides, and there were rumors of increasing pressure from the Azathari and other alien factions who feared humanity's rise. The balance of power was shifting, and the experiment could be the key to tipping it further in humanity's favor. It was during this tumultuous time that Dr. Kun received an unexpected message. A high-ranking Earth official, someone she had never met, contacted her directly. The message was simple, yet chilling. "Speed up your work, Dr. Kun. The world doesn't have time for caution. Do what needs to be done, even if lives are lost." Her hands trembled as she read the message again. This wasn't a request, it was a command. There was no mention of ethics or safety, only results. Earth's leaders were impatient, and they didn't care how Dr. Kun achieved them. This only deepened her fears. Was this the moment she had feared, the moment when her work, her discovery, would be twisted for political gain? Could she really control the fallout from something this dangerous? The situation became even murkier when Dr. Alistair Vail, a trusted colleague and fellow biochemist, approached her with troubling news. Vail, who had always been the voice of reason among their colleagues, had become increasingly concerned. He suspected that certain factions within the Earth government weren't just interested in neutralizing the toxins, they wanted to weaponize them. They intended to turn humanity into a superhuman race capable of dominating the galaxy. In their eyes, the experiment wasn't about saving Earth. It was about preparing for an all-out war with the Azathari, one that humanity wasn't ready for. Vail urged Dr. Kun to be cautious. The political intrigue surrounding the project was growing more dangerous by the day, and he feared that they were being manipulated into creating something that could have catastrophic consequences for the future of both humanity and the galaxy. Dr. Kun's mind reeled. She was trapped between her duty to save humanity and the growing suspicion that her discovery was being turned into a weapon of war. The cryptic warning from the ancient text echoed in her mind. The Resilient One became something else. Humanity will not be as it was. Not after the gift. What had this gift really meant? And was she ready to unlock it? As she continued her experiments, Dr. Kun knew that she had reached a crossroads. The true consequences of her work were still shrouded in mystery, but one thing was certain: whatever path she chose, it would change everything forever. The decision had been made. Dr. Aurelia Kun knew it was a dangerous gamble, but she felt she had no choice. She had spent days mulling over the consequences, weighing the moral implications, and yet the draw of the unknown, the chance to truly understand the Resilient One's legacy, was too powerful. She stood in the sterile lab, the cold metallic smell of the facility mingling with the sharp, almost sweet scent of the Azathari toxins she had carefully isolated. Her heartbeat thudded in her chest as she prepared herself for the experiment that could alter her life forever. She had carefully mapped out the process, ensuring that she could monitor her own vitals and reactions as closely as possible. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about unlocking a power within her DNA that had been dormant for millennia. Taking a deep breath, she connected the toxin to a controlled injector. Her hand trembled slightly as she pressed the syringe into her skin. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the burning sensation spread, like fire coursing through her veins. The toxins didn't just attack her body, they seemed to enter her very being, twisting and reforming the DNA inside her cells. She gritted her teeth, pushing past the pain, and wondered for a fleeting moment if she had made a terrible mistake. But then, the sensation began to change. The fire turned cold, and she felt something inside her shift. A clarity flooded her senses. Every detail in the lab, every faint sound, every movement in her peripheral vision became sharply distinct. Her heart rate surged as her mind began to process information at an unnerving speed. It wasn't just the physical transformation. It was something deeper, a new awareness. She could almost feel the Azathari toxins in her blood, like an instinctual connection to their very biology. She understood, as if by instinct, how the toxins worked, how they manipulated the cells, and created such profound destruction. But more than that, she understood how they could be controlled, how they could be used, and how they could be adapted. For a few moments, Dr. Kun was overwhelmed by the flood of information. She had never experienced anything like this before. It was as if her mind had expanded, her brain becoming attuned to a frequency she had never known existed. But alongside this newfound understanding came something far more troubling. As her body adapted, her thoughts began to shift. Her human emotions, her empathy, her compassion felt like they were fading, slipping away like water through her fingers. The more she tried to hold on to her humanity, the more distant it became. The Azathari influence, so subtle and yet so powerful, began to cloud her mind, replacing her thoughts with something colder, something alien. Dr. Kun staggered as she realized what was happening. Her body and mind were changing, evolving in ways she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just resistance to the toxins, it was a deeper transformation, one that threatened to erase the very essence of who she was. She could feel herself becoming something else, something not entirely human. And the more she embraced the power that surged through her, the more detached she became from the person she used to be. Her heart raced in her chest as she stood frozen in the lab. Was this the gift the ancient text had warned her about? The ability to survive and adapt, yes, but at a terrible cost? She could feel the pull of the Azathari within her, an alien presence that tugged at her very core, reshaping her thoughts, her desires, her identity. The longer she stayed in this state, the more she questioned if humanity's survival was worth such a price. Was this the future she had envisioned for herself, for her species? Or was it a trap, one carefully laid by the Azathari to lure humanity down a path of self-destruction? As the days passed, Dr. Kun's transformation deepened. Her heightened senses allowed her to perceive things that others couldn't. She could hear the faintest whispers from across the station, feel the vibrations in the walls, and even sense the smallest chemical changes in the air. But the deeper she delved into the Azathari biology, the more she realized how much of it was seeping into her own thoughts. The Azathari had mastered poison, yes, but they had also mastered the control over their own bodies and minds. And now, it seemed, she was starting to understand their worldview, their cold, logical perspective. She began to question everything she had worked for. She had sought to neutralize the Azathari toxins, to turn the tide in humanity's favor. But now, it felt as though humanity was the one in danger. If humanity embraced this new evolutionary path, would they become something entirely different? Would they still be human, or would they be something else, something foreign? Dr. Kun could feel the Azathari influence growing within her, urging her to embrace this new form of existence. It was powerful, seductive, and deeply unsettling. Her connection to Earth and her human colleagues began to weaken. She couldn't help but feel that they were small, fragile, unable to comprehend the magnitude of the changes she was undergoing. The emotions that had once bound her to her mission, to the people she cared about, felt distant now. Even her colleagues, once trusted friends, seemed like strangers to her. In the back of her mind, she knew that she was slipping away, becoming someone or something else. And she couldn't be sure if that was a tragedy or an inevitable step forward for her species. But the stakes of the experiment were rising, and Dr. Kun couldn't escape the reality of the political situation. The Earth government had caught wind of her transformation, and they had their own plans for her newfound abilities. A high-ranking official, one she had never met, contacted her with a chilling proposal. "We need you to lead the charge against the Azathari. Your abilities, your new resistance could be the key to a full-scale invasion of their homeworld." It was a horrifying realization. The The Earth government wasn't interested in neutralizing the toxins for humanity's benefit. They wanted to weaponize the very thing that was transforming her. The powers that be saw her as a weapon, an instrument for a war. They were eager to start. As the full weight of the situation pressed down on her, Dr. Kun's mind reeled. She had become the very thing she had fought against the Azathari, cold and calculating. But unlike them, she still had the ability to question her choices. The lives of billions rested in her hands, and she could no longer ignore the terrifying truth. The path humanity was on was one that could lead to its own destruction. Her transformation wasn't just physical, it was philosophical, emotional, and moral. The more she embraced her Azathari abilities, the more she understood the harsh logic of their species. She felt the allure of their cold, efficient worldview. Yet, in the depths of her mind, she knew that humanity was at risk of losing everything that made it unique, its empathy, its compassion, and its connection to one another. Was it worth it? Could she stop the transformation in time to save humanity from losing itself? Or had she already crossed a line that could never be uncrossed? The answers were elusive, and Dr. Kun felt herself slipping further into the unknown. The path ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain: whatever decision she made, it would shape the future of humanity forever. The Azathari homeworld was like nothing Dr. Aurelia Kun had ever imagined. It was a place of stark contrasts, desolate, yet alive with a quiet power that hummed beneath the surface. The barren landscape stretched out before her like an ancient, forgotten memory. Yet, even in its lifeless appearance, the planet seemed to pulse with an energy that resonated deep within her, a connection she could feel in her bones. She had arrived with Earth's army, prepared to face the Azathari in a final confrontation that would decide the fate of humanity's future. Yet, as she stood there, her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. The decision she faced now was the heaviest one of all. She had changed. She had become something new, something beyond human, a being capable of withstanding the Azathari toxins, capable of wielding power that could reshape the future of the galaxy. But as she stared across the war-torn battlefield, she realized that the cost of this power was far greater than she had ever anticipated. The same transformation that had granted her strength had also taken away her humanity, piece by piece. Now, she was caught in the middle of a war, with the weight of two conflicting destinies pressing down on her. Earth's government was determined to conquer the Azathari. They saw the Azathari toxins as a weapon, a tool to be used for their advantage. They saw her, Dr. Kun, as the key to that power. She could lead humanity into a new era of dominance, one where the Azathari would be crushed underfoot, and Earth's future would be assured. The government was willing to sacrifice everything to secure that future, including their humanity. To them, her transformation was a blessing, a glimpse into the evolutionary potential that would allow humanity to ascend to new heights. But Dr. Kun had seen enough. The Azathari were not just enemies to be destroyed. They were a people with a history and a culture, one that mirrored the very path humanity was about to take. The more she had learned about their past, the more she realized how closely their journey aligned with her own transformation. The Azathari, too, had once been a vulnerable species, subjected to harsh genetic experiments and manipulations. They had survived by adapting, evolving into something different, something stronger. But in doing so, they had lost much of what made them human. Their history was one of survival at any cost, of trading away their identities to become something greater. As Dr. Kun stood in front of the Azathari leaders, she felt the pull of their ancient wisdom. The toxins that had changed her were not just a weapon, they were a testament to the Azathari's resilience, their ability to survive. The Azathari had not been defeated by the poison, but had instead learned to wield it as a tool of evolution. And now, she stood on the precipice of a choice. Should humanity follow the same path, allowing the toxins to reshape them into something they had never intended? Or should she find another way, a way to preserve humanity's soul while still ensuring their survival? The confrontation came to a head when Dr. Kun was called to a meeting with the highest-ranking Azathari officials, who had agreed to meet with her in an effort to negotiate peace. As she entered the chamber, she saw their faces sharp, intelligent, calculating, but not cruel. There was no malice in their eyes. They had simply accepted the inevitability of their transformation, and in doing so, had become something more. They were survivors, like her. "We have been waiting for you," the Azathari leader, a tall figure named Ilthar, spoke softly. "You are the key to the next step in the evolution of your species." Dr. Kun felt the weight of those words settle over her. This was it. She could accept their invitation, become a leader of a new human race, one that was stronger, faster, more resilient than ever before. But at what cost? Was she willing to sacrifice everything she had once been, the warmth of human emotions, the connection to her friends and colleagues, the very essence of her identity, just to secure humanity's future? She looked around at the Azathari, their sharp eyes fixed on her, waiting for her answer. The decision gnawed at her. She had already paid a high price for her power. Her emotions had grown distant, colder. She could feel herself slipping further away from her humanity with every passing day. The Azathari had survived by shedding their past, by embracing a new way of life that was as cold and logical as their toxins. But was that truly survival? Or was it a death of the soul? "No," Dr. Kun finally spoke, her voice steady but resolute. "I will not let humanity become like you. I will not let us lose ourselves in the name of survival." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, she felt as though the entire universe held its breath. She had made her choice. She wasn't going to lead humanity into a future where they were slaves to their own evolution. She wasn't going to let Earth be molded by the same poison that had nearly consumed her. Instead, Dr. Kun made an irreversible decision. She would destroy the research. She would destroy everything, the notes, the data, the genetic codes, everything that held the secret to human resilience, to the gift she had unlocked. In doing so, she would erase the possibility of humanity following the same path as the Azathari. She would ensure that humanity could forge its own future, free from the shadow of alien influence. It was a deep sacrifice, one that cost her the very powers she had gained. As she watched the data vanish into the flames of destruction, she felt herself returning to the person she once was, but with a heavy heart. She had given up power, but she had also given humanity the chance to create its own destiny. However, as the research was destroyed, a final twist emerged. The Azathari toxins, it seemed, had done something irreversible. Dr. Kun's actions had erased the direct path to human evolution, but the seed of resilience had already been planted. In her genetic code, in the very DNA of humanity, there was now a hidden resistance, a latent ability to survive the toxins, waiting to emerge in future generations. The cycle had not been broken. It had merely been delayed. As Dr. Kun left the Azathari homeworld, the final question lingered in her mind. She had sacrificed her powers, and in doing so, had ensured that humanity would be forced to create its own path. But what did survival really mean? Was it worth losing everything that made them human in the name of survival? Or was there something deeper that could be learned from the Azathari, a lesson in resilience, but not at the cost of identity? Humanity would find its way, but the cost of survival would always remain. What would the future hold for them? The answer, as always, was uncertain.